my buddy. I am Carl. I am addict alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 22nd, 2014. And you are...
I'm Buddy C. My sobriety date is 11/10/08. Definitely alcoholic.
Definitely alcoholic. and this is SoberPod.
Soberpod.com. Yeah, SoberPod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.
The SoberPod is a podcast dedicated to the idea that one addict or alcoholic helping another is crucial to building a life in recovery. Join us this season as we read from our book, well, this book in particular right now today, 366 Effing Days Sober. And as always, stay active, stay sober. I guess you guys just heard there is a strange voice on the podcast today, and that is Buddy C. Buddy C and I have never met in person, but let's just say we started talking 2019, I think, and then and just back and forth, and then we did a couple podcasts together. We have been around the internets in sobriety with each other, and it has been always fun to check in with Buddy C and see what he's doing. So Buddy, what have you been doing the last 5 years since we talked?
Well, in the last 5 years, I published a book.
Oh, nice.
Powerless but not helpless. It's my recovery interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. So I've gotten that out. I'm working on a daily devotional now from Taoist writings that through the lens of recovery, and how those have spoke to me in a somewhat like what you've written in your daily devotional.
Mm-hmm.
For a 365 kind of deal. Done that, been working, life its own damn self, as one fellow says.
So you had also, I looked at one point, like you had a business book, like how to interpret recovery in like business principles, right? Like how to apply recovery principles in business, that kind of a thing. Did you ever finish that one, or is that one just on the table and still there?
That one's on the shelf waiting. That is not, because, man, my ideas change over time. And if I don't publish as soon as I'm finished, it's changed. So now I've got to go back and rewrite it because, it seems like as we wake up spiritually, how we see things continues to evolve and change. So a book I wrote 6-7 years ago is not really applicable to what what I would think funny. Now.
There's so many things I read in my own book, like on page to page basis. I'm like, oh, I don't even believe that anymore. Like there's things that I like go, oh, I must have felt so adamant about that idea that I took the time to devote a page to it. But then what happened was I got a new experience. I learned something different. And next thing I know, it's like, that doesn't even apply anymore. I want to rip that one out. I need to rewrite that. You know what I mean? So just like that. So yeah, I totally get that. So, talk to me about, first of all, I want to explain to people the reason why Buddy and I connected is we were both listening to, What's This Tao All About? And, do you need a second?
You remember this? Just a cup?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we were both listening to What's This Tao All About? And we were, I was trying to interpret the same thing, Taoist principles, into my recovery life and how that applied and, how that worked. And I was really enjoying all of the tentacles of like different philosophies that I was going to take in. So it's really neat to see like you taking that same idea and then really driving it home. the one thing I wanted to do was, because I got super into Stoicism, I wanted to take Stoicism and then see how that translated, kind of like what you're doing with the Taoism stuff. So it's really interesting to see how that would work. So really cool stuff. So how far along? So you said you published the book already? It's already available?
Yes, it's available. AmazonBuddyC.org. There's links there. They can actually download a PDF at BuddyC.org if they want to use it and share it and do all kinds of things. But yeah, it published a few years ago. I'm been doing some updates, fixing to have a Spanish translation out, and those things. So,
and it's for sale, not for free, or for both?
It was difficult for me to put the PDF up for free because I said, I can't do that. Everyone's going to download it instead of buy it. Whatever. But I got over it. That's a way I can surrender it, really,
Exactly. It's like I have no control at that point. It just, and then it just makes it easier for how it goes. Okay. So I guess one of the things I'd like to do is to get us onto a topic, because we could just sit here and bullshit all day about each other's stuff and have fun and do whatever. But what I really want to do is just start us off reading from my book, of course, from March 23rd, and then just see what that generates and pulls out of Buddy C in terms of a topic. And so this is kind of how, just any other meeting would work. Two people getting together talking about recovery, right? So here we're going to find a topic, and then we're just going to go with it. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, here it is. March 23rd. What you are doing requires discipline and fortitude. To wake up every day and decide to not take the easier, softer way will not be directly rewarding. There is no instant gratification in the discipline you are displaying. Fucking sucks, huh? Nobody said it would be easy, but they, whoever they are, say it will be better. Each day is another testimony to the way of life you have chosen. You wake up, make the commitment to stay sober, and go throughout your day with that intention. Know that it takes dogged persistence to do what you are doing. Sometimes the only reward we can see is a fucking new colored tin chip once in a while, but the intangible cannot be undervalued. What you acquire through discipline cannot be measured in ounces or grams. Don't worry about the fruits of your labor. They will come if you concern yourself with just the labor. There you go. We also have a reflection on that. What are you doing today? What do you have in front of you to do? What is your work to do today? Daily challenge. Go rate and review this book on Amazon.
Make 3 extra Amazon accounts so you can do 3 more.
The other challenge is to actually buy it. All right. So, buddy, what were you thinking as that was being read?
I was really curious to what your thought process was when you were writing that, because it sounds a little darkish.
It is dark, and that's what I love about my stuff. Is that it was based in reality. It's no bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? So let me just say, getting sober was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I talked about this on Instagram this morning. Basically, I do daily posts of this stuff too. But one of the things about for me was it mentally, like everything about getting sober was the hardest thing I've had to do. And I've had to do some hard things, like even in 2020 when I had my lung surgery, man, that was hard. I had to do 3 weeks in the hospital. I had to rehabilitate, and I had to do all this, extra rehabilitation. Dude, I'm going through bladder cancer right now. And and the thing is, it does not compare, for me anyway, getting sober, right? Like getting sober, just the longevity, the fortitude, the dogged persistence of getting sober was fucking hard. And I think that it's like nobody that hasn't gone through it or hasn't understood the fight for that demon will ever understand what it takes for that individual to really dig deep and to rise above and climb out of that. And it just is something that I think we don't we can't share that with other people enough. Like they'll never be able to get it unless they've gone through it. And I hope that they never have to go through it. But, a lot of the times, in early recovery, we want people to understand how hard it was, or we want them to see like, oh, what addiction is or what alcohol is. We really want them to understand us, right?
Poor pitiful me, right?
Yeah, right. and the fact is like, you realize that it is a very solitude action, and it is something that is just you and your mind and your God and whatever you have to do that with. It's nobody's coming to save you. You're it, right? So that's kind of the idea behind that stuff, is to say like, you're alone in this. So yeah, it's dark, right? But it's once you can find a foothold and rise above, it will be the thing that you use as fuel to move forward every day. Like, I never regret ever being sober today. There's not a time I wake up and go, man, I wish I would have gotten drunk yesterday. Just like, you know what I mean? Just never happens. And so every day that I have stayed sober has proven to me time and time again that this was the right decision, and that I absolutely, no matter how I felt about it, it has never done me wrong, ever. So
same here. And someone from the outside listening in could think that we just finally, tried hard enough to make it happen, which is furthest from the truth. That element of surrender came into this that I did not know before sobriety. How does surrender factor in that for you, Carl? That turning our will and our life over, letting it go, in other words, that versus working harder and trying and doing all we can do. How does that fit? Because sometimes that was the most difficult thing for me to get early in sobriety.
So how does surrender?
Yeah, surrender equate into this thing? Because it doesn't sound like surrender.
Yeah, there are 1,000 forms of surrender, right? That is just, and in that part of it, that's really part of the dogged persistence, right? Because you lean into that idea of surrender in 1,000 different ways, and it's all very difficult, right? Mentally, anyway, it's all very difficult, because I think I've stayed alive up to this point. Like, what the hell do I need all these other conditions for? You know what I mean? Like, I figured it out. I got by. I'm still alive, And I mean, I'm not doing well. Not like I'm at death's door, but I'm still alive, right? So when I talk about that, that sounds like tenacity. That sounds like gritting your teeth. That sounds like, you know what I mean? But just even the commitment is the willingness, right? It's like, I'm going to make a commitment to stay sober today. And even if that's how you do it, that's how you do it. Great. Because that will get you to the next stage. That will get you to the next, episode, right? So that's kind of how I looked at it. So how I look at it is, so that dogged persistence was that dogged persistence to do what was in front of me, right? What was being offered to me to do. And in my case, it was going into 12-step. It was going to a meeting. It was considering my relationship with a higher power, because that's what I'm told to do, right? The universe is feeding me every day I get sober, right? There's a reason why we sit here and talk about this stuff, because these are the tools in which we need in order to do this deal how it needs to be done, I think, in my personal opinion. So that's kind of the idea, is I am presented with this difference of surrender like every day. So I'm surrendering my thoughts, my actions, the way I think that things should work, my old ideas about who I think that I am. That all that stuff is a multitude of experience that, like, it cannot be done in, it's so funny. I sat in a meeting once, and I listened to a guy with about 15 days sober, and he said he did all the steps last weekend and he's good. And he's totally changed his life. And if we could all just do the same thing, we'd all be as free as he was. He didn't need to come back to any more meetings. So So I'm just like, well, for me, it's a little different, right? Like there is a process that drives me, and there is pain in all that process. There is, again, the tenacity, the dogged persistence that it takes to get up and do it again, or to be pissed off at whatever meeting or whatever concepts they're trying to present, and then go, well, maybe I'll give it one more try, right? Maybe I'll try it one more time. This time I'll actually do the thing the way that they tell me to do it, and see how it really works. Being honest with myself, right? That takes like a huge responsibility in mentally, and to be able to take that stuff on. Is that what you're talking about in terms of surrender, like how to do it?
It is. We still work hard, but we work hard at some things that are different than what we did before. For me, that meant I had to be honest with another person, like you talked about. That's the importance of me having a sponsor that I can call at any time and discuss what's going on in my head, because as long as those thoughts are in my head, they make sense sometimes. When I just say them before my sponsor or someone in recovery even hears them, I know they're bullshit, before I even hear from that person what they think, like, oh fuck, why did I think that? That's all. Once I get it out,
saying it to them.
And it's that, and that's what I love about Taoist thought is much of it's about letting go. And one that I really like is the master does her work and she lets it go, and in letting it go makes it stay. So, it's not our self-effort, it's our letting go. So, all this stuff I used to carry around, I don't have to carry anymore. I used to I thought I had to orchestrate the world for everyone's benefit, when now it's like what you were talking about. I do what's in front of me to do, and I leave those expectations to their own. I don't, I try not to get involved in those. And the more I get wrapped up in outcomes, the more screwed up I am, and the more screwed up I stay.
That's basically what it says at the end of that reading, which is like, your task is to do the work and not expect the fruits of the labor, right? Just like you,
exactly.
The work is the fruit, right? We just don't ever see it that way,
We can't make we can't make the apple tree produce apples. We can just do the work that makes the environment conducive to producing fruit. And that's what we do for our lives. We keep doing the things that are conducive. For me, that's going to meetings, it's meeting with sponsoring is a big part of my life. Now, I remember when I first decided to start, that I needed to sponsor. I was about 5 years sober. And the meeting I went to was not a meeting where we had a lot of newcomers, because it was an old timers meeting. It was one of those church meetings on Friday night that no one, newcomers didn't come to that meeting. It intimidated them. So so I had to go to a meeting.
Long time dudes myself, being new in recovery, I'd be like, screw that.
So I had to go to them. I had to go to where they were, right? They were at the noon meeting getting their paper signed. So so I had to go to the shitty noon meeting, which I didn't enjoy, and so I tried to avoid. So I said, okay, I'll go to the meeting. I sat down this literally happened. I sat down at the noon meeting. A guy came up before the meeting, sat down beside me. He says, hey, I've been wanting to get together with you. Would you be my sponsor? Before the meeting even happened, right?
Huh. So he knew about you before? Yeah, great.
Well, it wasn't that. It was just the fact that I took the action and everything else took care of itself, I've had those kind of, a lot of people call those God moments or that synchronicities that happen in life. I see those all the time. I see those almost on a daily basis now, that life, a Tao quote that goes with that is that the man of Tao stands on what is already moving. So, to stand on what's already moving, you've got to see what's moving first. That's the deal, right? So that's doing those things that, that feed us spiritually so we can continue to wake up to what's already there.
You better watch it. I'm going to go right back into Taoism now because I've been doing Stoicism like the last 3 years.
I started studying a Stoic book with my sponsor because we started reading. I told my sponsor, I said, hey, with all my sponsees, we read literature all the time. We read a book and talk about it every week when we meet. So I wanted to do that with him, and he's interested in Stoicism. So we started reading a Stoic book just a couple of weeks ago. So we're starting to do the same thing that you've been studying. So he really enjoys that. So I'm curious to see what all we find.
There's a lot of direct relationship. So I guess I want to go back. In your early recovery, did you struggle with your sobriety? Was it something that you constantly fought? Because for me, like there was a lot of internal fight, not necessarily external. I mean, there was some external in like not going to meetings or, not listening to, certain, things. I didn't want to join this whole spiritual thing. I thought this is all bullshit. I didn't want to go to 12 step. I didn't, but I didn't know anywhere else to go. Right. I thought about going to SMART and, that kind of stuff, but, AA was, there, right? 12 step was readily available. And I knew it from, when I was a kid and this kind of stuff, but did you find it like a struggle to get the concepts early on, or like did you not agree with certain, precepts of what they were offering? Again, higher power, inventory, amends processes, or just even anything else along those lines. Did you have trouble grasping all that stuff or struggling with it?
I did have trouble. It took 6 years for me to put a year together when I came in. I did not have a problem with God or higher power, whatever name you want to put on it. I was raised in church. I'd gone to church as an adult, but I did not connect. When I started having issue drinking and could not control it, no matter how hard I prayed, it didn't seem like I got any help for that. Mm-hmm. So when I came to AA, I saw that there was something I was lacking. They had something that I wanted. The first meeting I went to, I was having to go. My wife was on my case. I'd gotten a DUI, so I had to go. All those things that start building up. So I started going to meetings. And the guy, first time I saw that anyone drank like I drank was the first meeting I went to. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he drank like I used to drink. And I sized like I did always. I was a successful business guy. I had a lake house, new suburban, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I always sized everyone up. And I said, gosh, I'm a lot smarter than he is. So if he could get it, I'm sure I can too. And that because, I was a guy that when I was a kid, you got the new pinball machine, right? You go up and you don't just play. You read the instructions first because the goal's not to play. The goal's to win. You want the high score. You don't want to just play. Yeah. So I did that with everything. So I'd read the instructions. I would do whatever so that I could, and I was pretty smart. So if I read the instructions, I could figure things out. So I looked at the steps. I said, and I more or less did them all the first week, just like the guy you're talking about. Because they looked pretty simple to me and they made sense. But the part I didn't get, and what took 5 years, my attitude toward God was that I did everything I could do. And I did my best and God did the rest, in other words. Like I did all the effort I could possibly do, like scaling that fence, and I was almost over. And then when I did everything I could do, he'd push that cheek over, to get over at the very end, right? But it was up to me to do all I could first. So in reality, there was no surrender in that. It was just me asking for more strength, which is not what I eventually learned in recovery. After 5 years or so, I'd stay sober a week, a month. I think one time I got 6, 8 months, and back and forth. I was the guy in the meeting drunk, all that stuff, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally, I said, I'm either, this is done. I'm either going to find a way to kill myself that I'll go, or this is going to work, because this back and forth, I quit. And that was my surrender, more or less. And from that point on, Carl, I never had a desire to drink. It just lifted immediately. And my idea, my thought at the moment, and I remember it, I wrote a note, sat in the backyard, pulled the gun away from my head before I shot. I couldn't go through. I was just chicken shit, just couldn't do it. Didn't have the courage. And I said, I will find a way. But this is done. I cannot do this anymore. And when it lifted at that moment, my idea was, I remember the thought. It was, fuck, was it this easy the whole time? Is this all I had to do was stop trying? There's this element of stopping the self-effort to get rid of it, coupled with this surrender aspect that, is so far beyond words to put together. It has to be experienced. It's like, the taste of the strawberry. Can you explain how strawberry tastes? I cannot. You just have to experience it. You got to taste one. Same thing with surrender. And it wasn't that I, laid on the couch and watched Big Valley reruns, it wasn't, that's what Bonanza, that's not what happened. That's not what surrender meant. Surrender meant was I laid down my tools. I stopped fighting. All my weapons I had to lay down. I didn't keep a pistol back, so I could defend myself. No, you lay down all your weapons. Then, if you're defeated by another country, let's say if you're a soldier and you're defeated, it's the responsibility of that country at that time to take care of you once you surrender. So there's an aspect of that in that once I let go and surrender, that I'm taken care of. Now my job, I still have a job. My job's different now. My job now is to do what's in front of me to do, and to be helpful in everything that I see. And that's more than just helping another alcoholic. Because, we know from the big book that nothing so much immunes against a drink than working with another alcoholic. It works when other activities fail. We know that. And that's the secret that Bill Wilson found, was that he got relief when he helped somebody else. So that factors in now. So first thing I can do, go to a meeting. Second thing, I tell guys, how do you connect with your higher power? How do you connect? Well, I connect this way. I connect in whatever. Well, do double whatever that is. I had a guy, real successful guy. He could not stay sober. He just couldn't do it. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you connect? He said, I connect at meetings. I said, okay, I want you in a meeting every day. I don't care how you get there. I don't care if you're drunk. It doesn't matter to me. You text me what meeting you went to for that day. And if I don't get a text from you that evening, I assume you don't want me to be your sponsor anymore. You're going to a meeting every day if you want me to work with you. He's the only guy I ever did that with. Mm-hmm. And within a week, he's been sober ever since. And that's been 4 or 5 years.
That's the exact dogged persistence part, right? That's
exactly.
Yeah. Because you still have work to do. There isn't like some, like you said, you don't sit around and just By the way, watching Bonanza is like the oldest reference you could possibly pull out.
I know
like
that's what
all these these young people are like, what the fuck is Bonanza?
Well, let's update it. What's one now? I don't know. Watching South Park.
Netflix.
Sitting down watching
Netflix.
Oh, Netflix. I'm sorry. Okay,
yeah. So, but that's the idea. So, for me, it was that same way. It's like I wasn't suddenly struck sober, right, and able to walk into the world now with this like new rose-colored glasses. That's not what happened, right? It's so funny. You say, you're sitting in the backyard with a gun. Mine is literally arguing with my wife again, right? It's like my bottom in sobriety is I'm leaning against the wall. She's standing there yapping at me like you're saying something I don't even know anymore. And I got my back against the wall, and I'm falling down, and my knees now are suddenly in my chest, and I'm crying basically. And I say, I can't do this anymore. And she when she goes, can't do what? And she's thinking that it's our marriage that I can't do. And I'm like, if she only knew, I'm like, I can't do sober anymore. Like that's really where I was at. And so it was just all of that culminating, and that for me was a point of surrender, right? Like I knew, like, okay, like this, none of this is working. I've been trying for, I think, about 2 years, but I had been sober though, right? I was physically sober, but I was more crazy sober than I ever was on, drink or drug. I mean, seemingly anyway. Because I was at least there to notice it all.
right.
But yeah, it was like I said, there's 1,000 forms of surrender, whichever one gets you there. At the end, it's always in the last analysis, right? But yeah, there's 1,000 forms before that last one too. So that's kind of where it's at. It's like, yeah, it is a difficult process. It really is.
And then also, Carl, what I didn't realize was that was just the first aspect of surrender that worked. Then came all the gifts that I wanted in the next few years when I realized that I could have the same relief in the rest of life that I was getting for my alcoholism, which was killing me. I mean, it was killing me before I got in the program. I had pancreatitis so bad I lost 90% of my pancreas. And then I got out of the hospital. I was in the hospital 6 weeks, get out, and within 3 months, I'm drinking again. All this happened before sobriety, So I knew that how much of a grip alcohol had on me. And I said, man, I can get the same relief for everything else. So my quest, so to speak, has been to get the same relief in all of life that I've got for my alcoholism, which is what the 12th step says, practicing these principles in all our affairs. Now, I think that's what it's talking about, is we can have that same relief by stepping out of the way in other aspects of our life. A lot of us don't do that. A lot of us step out of the way enough to get rid of our addiction, and then we try to control the rest of it. We keep a cheek on the throne, we don't totally let go. But that's the process for me.
You were talking about keeping one cheek on the seat, and to me that is reminding me of my struggle with. I had to go back at 5 years sober. I went back and redid the steps, and one of the things that I found in doing that was that I never really relinquished my my sense of control and my step 2, right? Came to believe, it's like sorry, is it step 2? Sorry, no, step 2 is
came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
And then, that I was insane, I guess is the idea, is that, I literally had a hard time thinking about, as it related to alcohol, yes, I was insane, right? As it related to drugs, everything like that, I was insane, no doubt about all that stuff. But I just didn't never really consider the other aspects of my life, and that could be part of the insanity. That, like, the way in which I operated, the way in which I thought, the way in which I wanted control over these things, whether it be myself or others or situations, all these things, there's where the insanity lied for me, and that's where for me the work needed to happen more so than anything else, because if I hadn't done that stuff, I wasn't going to be able to live the life that I had. I wasn't. All the things that were, just add water, like, just add Carl. Like, my life was already readily available. It was all here. It had been built up around me. All I had to do was be able to step into it, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't fit with the way in which the world was built. But that was a big part of the key for me, is that, realizing that, like, I'm quote unquote insane to a certain degree, right? Even though I manage well, even though I do things well, I literally, I don't do that well in everything, right? And it really does cause a lot of damage as it relates to relationships and work and, all the other family, all that stuff. So it sounds like you had a similar problem, right? Keeping
Yes.
that seat
And
on
I
the
still
cheek.
do. I still do.
Yeah, I guess.
What I realized, the insanity for me was the insanity to think that I could run my life. And I equate it to a child in a healthy family that's 4 years old, let's say, or 5. You don't, or let's say they're in grammar school. They come home. They don't knock to see if they can come in today. Can I come in today? No, this is your home. Come, you don't say, I can't make the bills this month, guys. You're going to have to go out and start making some money and bring it in to help us keep the power on. You don't put that responsibility on a 7, 8-year-old or any small child. You don't do that to a child. Even if that's the case, you don't do that. Yeah, it's not their responsibility. But for me, I realized there was those same responsibilities I was taking on for the rest of life too, which I found through working the steps that I didn't have to carry for anything in life, not like I used to carry. That if I would learn to surrender in those things, like business, that I could be taken care of in the same way. Doesn't mean I sit around watching Netflix all day.
Good reference, by the way.
Thank you. I'm bringing up to speed. It means that I learned my job is different now. My job is different. My job is in whatever I'm doing, looking for a way to be helpful. And I can have that attitude in anything, Carl. That's in anything.
So when you say, like, in business, like, what does that mean exactly? Like, again, you're not like just, I'm just going to show up to work today and that's it, right? Like, what does that mean as you get into work? What kind of attitude and what kind of, I guess, principles or actions do you take in those moments with work that make it, like, not you grabbing the reins and managing it all, quote unquote?
Used to be in the real estate business when I was first learning this. And one that comes to mind is, let's say I had listings that needed to sell, which I did at the time. I used to invest, and then I got my license to sell my stuff, and then just things evolved. Instead of asking and looking for ways, I did everything I could to get a listing to sell. But, there's a time when you do everything you can do, and then you're just, you're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was I realized there was one woman in the real estate business that I just did not like.
That fucking bitch. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
my sponsor says,
just,
you got to stop calling her that fucking bitch. That's what, sorry.
That's it. So I started praying for her listings to sell.
Oh, wow. Oh.
That's the kind of things I'm talking about. I still did what was in front of me to do. When I was meeting with a client, and I still do this if I'm meeting with someone for business, or I do this now for almost anyone I'm meeting with. I remember one day I asked a client, I said, is there anything else I can do for you today? And in my head, I was thinking, why am I asking this person this? Because you never ask open-ended questions. You only ask
Because
questions
that
that
just
you know
means
the
more
answer
work.
to.
Why would you want
That
to
just
do
means
that?
exactly. But what I realized was I was starting. My attitudes were starting to change, and my motivations, rather than a fear motivation, which is what I always had, that I was going to lose something I had or not get something I was demanding. Now that was changing to more of a compassion-based motivation. And I asked, and they surprisingly they said, "No, there's nothing else. Thank you."
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
and so I realized that that's the kind of things that start happening to a lot of people on the outside. They would see no difference whatsoever. But me having to think I've got to run the show and get in there and push, 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 that whole attitude changes. And it's a lot of times behind the scenes, and no one but me sees that. But it does make a difference. I realize that all of my excessive pushing most of the time made no difference whatsoever in the situation. It still worked out the way it was going to work out, regardless of how hard I pushed. And that pushing just stirred me up and got me in the way rather than me being able to relax my way through whatever was going on.
Yeah,
Does that make
so,
sense?
Yeah, it's so funny. It reminds me of Dr. Bob, right? It's like it's like 3 simple instructions, right? Trust God, clean house, and help others. It's like it can be real simple, but but not easy, as they always say. So I guess that's the whole thing. Is like you go from these like you're wrestling with the ism or the drinking and the active alcoholism, and then once you get a certain amount of sobriety, you could also be wrestling with a spiritual bottom as well. And then again, as the story develops, it seems, I mean, you and I are very similar in that, right? Like that it's like I hit a spiritual bottom, and it was only when I let go of thinking that I have like this figured out, or that I could do something about it, did I really start to rely on quote unquote powers greater than myself. And when I started doing that and started to listen to what they were saying, part of that was to go and help others. It was to speak at treatment centers, and it was to start this stupid podcast. And it was, it's like all that good stuff. And it's the same thing of like write a book. It's like my sponsor died, and I literally I didn't know what to do with my hands and feet. Like I didn't know what to do with my grief. And I was walking downstairs, and I heard not an audible voice, but a feeling voice that said, write a book, tell everybody about what he taught you, right? And just put it down on paper, and that's what I did for the next 6 months, and it really did help. Again, because I had others in mind when I was creating it. That's how it worked. So I guess that's what we do, right? It's like that's just kind of how it works out. Is once you're in the stream, you just start doing the legwork, and the results come on their own, and it's not up to us, right? So
you learn to raise your feet, not drag your feet as much in the stream. Just go where it's taking you.
What is it? Is it water finds its own level? That's a very Taoism kind of a thing, right?
There's a lot of there's a lot of water quotes with.
In Stoicism, it talks about we are this is the dark part of Stoicism maybe that I'm attracted to, is that it says we are dogs, basically being we're chained to a cart, right? And that cart moves from A to Z whether we like it or not. But we get enough slack in that leash every once in a while. Well, we can stop and smell a flower. We can eat a little something here and there. We can even stop to take a poop. But if we don't continue to stay with the cart, we will get dragged. That's just how it works, right? So you can choose. So life being the metaphor there, you can choose to stay with the cart as it goes, or with God as the universe is, right? Or you can choose to get dragged. Whichever way, you're still going to go from point A to point Z. So it's kind of how that works.
A lot of acceptance in that. A lot of acceptance.
Yeah.
And I found through some very difficult life, that my peace and joy came from me accepting the situation as it is, not the situation being the way I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds very esoteric, so how can that really be? What if you had a child die, let's say? Well, I did have a child die, and that's when I learned it. I learned it when my son got sick, and he passed 30 days later, but the whole situation taught me that my peace was not in the situation being the way I wanted it, but in me accepting it for what it was in that moment. Now, I could work toward changing something, do whatever I could do, but I can't even see clearly what needs changing until I accept it like it is right now in this very moment. So I think that's the whole point of spirituality, is getting us to the present moment where all of that can take place. We can't help anyone except in this moment. We can't be helped except in this moment. All that happens right now. And I realized my fear's what took me out of that. My fear's what attached the expectations, because what if it's this way? What if it's this way? And then I was out of the moment, so I couldn't be present, so I couldn't experience life. And there's a lot of that in what you're saying there.
Yeah,
we are chained.
Yeah, but in a, I think in a way too, it's like, Christians will say it all the time. God only gives us as much as we can handle. That kind of stuff. And I used to resent that kind of talk. I used to hate that. It just made me bristle. Like, fuck you. Because I thought I had some control, right? But it's very true, right? You are given in this world, and we're all given. If it can happen to another human being, then it can happen to you. And if they can do it, so can you. And there isn't a lot of things that haven't happened in this, world that, you just could not bear, right? So if somebody else has done it, you surely can. So that's a really good, positive way to look at those things. A lot of good acceptance in that. And in the Stoics, they call it amor fati, which is like the love of fate, right? So, but it's also not only to take what is happening, but then to ask for more, right? So it's like, which is like, and I think you kind of did that a little bit as you talk about in business, right? You said, not only did you, your listings are not selling, but then you pray for somebody else, for them to have their listings. That definitely means yours are not going to get sold if that's the case, right? If that comes to fruition, dang, you prayed yourself out of getting a listing sold. So but that's amor fati. That's not only is it the love of fate, but that you asked for more, right? And yeah, I just think it's really interesting how that works. Look like you had something to say. So.
I do. With acceptance too, you talked about the Bible, and we have this phrase in recovery that everything is as it should be, which I don't know if I really buy into that anymore. Maybe everything just is as it is. Maybe it just is instead of should be. I don't know. I realized my ideas of the higher power were changing, and it was moving toward the present moment. And I remembered what, Moses asked God who he was in the burning bush back in Exodus in the Bible. And what God told him was, I am that I am. Tell them I am sent you. And I had a Jewish friend that I got to look some things up for me. And he told me one possible definition of the I am that I am is this ever-present moment. So I got to thinking about that, and I think, could God be this ever-present moment? I'm talking about right now in life. I don't know about after. I'm not getting into any of that. And I thought, well, if walking in compassion brings us to the moment, if God is the moment, okay, that makes perfect sense to me. So it's kind of one of those things that my Christian friends, I still have some real strict Christian friends. I said, guys, if 10-year or 15-year-old, me 15 years ago would have known me now, 15 years ago, me would think I was going to hell because of what I'm thinking now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to be open, and I think just what is just keeps revealing itself to us. What's real and what really affects our life, and me learning that it's about this ever-present moment. That's all I have. So I need to make the most of this moment. And I can only do that if I'm present. If I'm not present, I'm pissing it away, which is what I always did. Even when things were going well, I was planning for something out in the future because I was afraid I'd lose some of what I have now, that kind of thing. You know, I remember when I didn't have money to pay bills, I didn't have money to make payroll, let's say. I would be afraid I wouldn't have money. And then once I had a couple of zeros in the bank, I was afraid I would lose it. The fear was still there either way. The fear never left. It just jumped to something else. So then I realized that me being present is where that is. And two tools I really used for that, Carl, I wanted to share with you. They were both from my Zen Buddhist friends. They weren't from AA. One was, thank you for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. That's from a story by Sono. She was a Buddhist monk. And a guy came to her and said, hey, I'm have trouble with everyone. Everyone makes me angry. I'm disturbed all the time. What can I do? She said, for everything, say, thank you for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever, no matter what happens. He said, okay. He did it for a year and came back to see her, said, nothing's changed. Everyone still aggravates me. And she said, thank you for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. And then he got it. It wasn't about them. It was about him, right?
Yeah. So, Marcus Aurelius in Stoicism says, never be heard complaining, not even to yourself. Right?
Ooh.
Yeah. So.
Ooh. The second one was, I would not change blank, whatever's eating your lunch, even if I could.
Mm-hmm.
That one's even more difficult.
Yeah.
And those things I would say, even when I did not believe them, just like we pray for someone we have a resentment against, even if we believe it's empty words, that, we really don't want it for them, we do it anyway. I had to say that in that same way. And every time I said it, not believing, I would not change my son's medical condition, even if I could. Wow. Every time I said that, I got a little more peace. A little more peace, a little more peace. And within a couple of hours, because I sat with it, it took a couple of hours of steady meditation. Fortunately, I just came out of a multi-day retreat a few days before, so I was okay sitting 2 hours. That wasn't a problem. I just stayed with it, and it lifted. Now, I still had to go back and do that when I had to go to Atlanta to the ICU where he was. There was a whole room of people there waiting to see people in the ICU. They weren't there because things were great. I just started praying for each of them when I thought about his situation. I prayed for each of the rooms that opened up into the ICU instead of sitting there thinking about his situation, the fact he's got a 7-month-old son, that all those things, that how you could just spin out. So, yeah, it's all of that helped me to be present, and being present and not escaping was the key, Carl. And I've learned to use that in acceptance in all kinds of other things since then. But now I'll let things eat my lunch, get out there, and I say, oh shit, I'm not doing what I know I need to be doing, and I've lost my peace. I'm disturbed. I'm angry. All those things. And so I would have to reset, come back, say, okay, how do I reset this? Maybe go to a meeting, sit with it for a little while, and do, work the tools that we learn in here to work, as we stay sober.
For sure. Well, I'm really sorry to hear about your son. That definitely, I think I saw a post on it a while back, so it was definitely had to be hard. That's all I know.
It was. I did write about it. I don't know where that's going to be used. I hope it's used somewhere at some point. But his son's doing great. Everything's, it's all, life is life, and life keeps going, so.
After all of the, the efforts in recovery, and after everything that you've gone through, like, what do you find the most valuable out of all of that today? Like, you talking about being in the now, right, and being in here. Like, out of all the lessons you've learned since 2008, what has served you the most?
And I don't know where I picked this up, Carl. This has been years ago, but pre-pandemic, I started going around the room when I went to a meeting. I'm not a daily meeting person. I go a couple of times a week, maybe. I at least like to go a meeting a week. So I'm not, unless I've got a reason to be there. I figured, I learned that I needed to do three things: open my heart to each person, send each person love, and ask, how can I be of service to them today? So I got to where, while they were reading all the stuff, I would go around the room and do that for each person individually in the room, whether I knew them or not. And I learned to do that with other things too. People if I was talking to someone about business or anything, open my heart to this person, I send them love. How can I be of help to them today? And just sit with it and see what happens. Then my meditation time, which with time, when I first started in recovery, I'd spend 10 minutes a day, or not even that, say a quick prayer, read the daily reflection, and I was off to whatever I was doing. And that's morphed into more meditation practice, which I started a number of years ago. And that takes a good bit more time at this point, and it varies time-wise, but I start that time with the same thing. Open my heart to the moment. How can I be of service? I send you love. How can I be of service to you today? And I started that with everything, and that practice, since I started it, has not changed, and I don't think it will. That's just becoming more and more real in more of my life. So the thing that I have found over the years is really back to what I tell sponsees: how do you connect spiritually, and however you connect, continue to do that. Maybe do it more, and see what happens, because it's evolving for me. It's just like my relationship with my father. He's still alive. Is much different than it was when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old or 18 or 28. I'm 60 now. It's much different now that it's actually starting to revert back, but the opposite, have you done this? Have you done, it's reverting, but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's the same thing with our awareness to spiritual matters, that our relationship to what is and what's happening spiritually is different. And lowering the expectation and just being available, really. I never was available. That makes me available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. There's a lot in there. I think one of the things for me is, I mean, as you talk about spirituality, I don't really talk about spirituality a lot with people, and even on the podcast a lot. But the fact is like, I was just in a meeting on Friday, and I think one of the things that and I shared on spiritual, like in a Carl way, right? I say like, I'm not all God, rah, 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 right? Which I'm not, but in the thing that like I have found the most is that I have a constant conversation with my higher power all day long, where I never had that before. And that there's and I used to, it's kind of how I found it when I was originally meditating, which was like I had a what I used to call like a sober a silent sober spot in the center of my skull. I just like the way I said S's a lot, but it's true. The silent sober spot in the center of my skull, and I could access that at any given time. And once I found that to begin with, and I found that through meditations, but once I found that, that's where I can go there all the time. And it is just, and that's where I have this constant conversation. And I hesitate to talk about that stuff because I hated the idea of spirituality. I hated the idea of God. I hated the idea of any of those things, like especially in early recovery. It was like they talk about, basically bristling at the sound of God. Like that was me. Like I literally, like anytime I hear the word God, I was like, I bristle with antagonism. I just could not stand it. And then, and that's why I kind of hesitate on talking about this stuff, because I don't want to like do that to other people, right? But I do want them to hear what it is that has helped me. And I think I was the only way. I only got there by hearing those like me say the same thing, right? So I think that's the idea.
I tell you what really set me free was one day I realized that everyone had their own God language, so to speak, their own spiritual language. I don't like the way German sounds, but just because someone speaks German doesn't mean that they're speaking the wrong language. Okay. Yeah, for real, so I couldn't say the Lord's Prayer for a long time because I don't believe God's up in the sky, and I go into all my why I believe this and this and this and why, so I would just be silent. Then when I realized this, I said, everyone has their own native tongue as far as spirituality is concerned. So when we say the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting, we're all using a common tongue that we all know. May not be our native tongue, but it's a common tongue that we can say that together. So then I could start saying the Lord's Prayer together again, because it was just it was another finger pointing at the moon, as we say. It was pointing at something. It wasn't the thing. It was pointing at something, like all the spirituality does.
You're going to have to back up for people on that reference, because nobody's going to get that. Now, the idea is this, is that you're trying to point out the moon to a dog, right? And the dog only looks at the tip of your finger every time you point. He doesn't care to look at the moon. He just keeps looking at your finger. So that's kind of what you're talking about, that part right there.
Yeah. So all spirituality's doing that, Carl. It's all pointing at something else. It's not pointing at itself.
Yeah, and we keep looking at the point of our finger instead of the moon, right? So because we hear it in one way, and it's just like, that's exactly what I did. I totally would, like, I'd hear the word God, and I would think about this different, version of God, where they were talking about something a little more freeing and more spiritual or whatever. I went straight to, this is why people are fighting wars and dying, right? Because this word, I would look at it very negatively. I didn't have any relationship to it. So
if I have someone that approaches me and they say, well, I don't believe in God, I said, that's fine. You don't have to believe anything. I said, I guarantee you, let's do your 4th step. Let's do the things that we learn to do, the tools, like, for example, you have someone that you resent. Maybe you don't pray for them. Why don't you just hope they have a good day today? Well, I can't do that. I don't want them to have a good day. Well, do it anyway.
Yeah.
And if you start implementing the tools, you'll see your life will get better. If it doesn't, then okay, but everyone I've ever worked with, they seem to. And your beliefs will come about from your act. We act our way into right thinking, right? Our actions will form our beliefs instead of our beliefs form our actions. So I say, get to doing the real work. And then as you do the work, which is steps 4 through 9, and then continuing them with 10, 11, 12, you'll start seeing your life change.
Which, again, that's why we always...
And that's what it's about,
That's why we come full circle. So back to the reading. That's what the...
Yes.
That's what the hard part is, right? That's what...
it is.
Again, it's always about, there is work to do that is in front of you, right? And it, even though it may be difficult. It may be hard, and and you have to continue to have the discipline and be willing to do that stuff. The fact is if if you're not doing the work, you will not get the results, even though the results are not up to you, right? It's kind of how that works. So, so buddy, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on, and we should do this more often. It's because it's been too many years that we haven't done it. Hey, I do want to ask, like, can you said people can go to buddyc.org? Is that what it was?
Yes.
And then what else do you have to offer there? You got at least a couple books. What else do you offer there?
During the first of the pandemic, I did a project called Sober Meditations, where I did over 400 contemplative meditations, 9 on each step, and I take a little thought and put it in the meditation, and they're 5, 10, and 20-minute meditations. Basically, the 10-minute has all the gist of the meat, and I'm looking for a place for them now. They cut out my app. I use Libsyn, and they cut out the app, so we were abandoned last year. This is a good example of letting go. I looked around online, tried to find me an app, and I said, there's nowhere that I can see. I'm powerless over what to do with this thing. And a couple months later, sponsee of mine, old sponsee, was in Orlando. I went over and visited him and sat down beside a lady at the conference, and she was with Sober Sidekick. Out of the whole room, I happened to sit at the table where she was, right beside her, right? Yeah. And they're starting to put some of the sober meditations on the Sober Sidekick app now, which is open to over 1 million people that use it around the world.
Yeah, I interviewed him not too long ago.
Oh, cool.
Cool. About 4 years ago or so. Yeah. He's a good guy. He's a real good guy.
They're getting it together. So you can access all those meditations at sobermeditations.org. If someone wants to use them now, they're more than welcome to. They're just sitting there. But yeah, meditations. I do a daily devotional that you could sign up for at buddyc.org. We do a podcast every week. We just hit our 400th episode. We're fixing to go through the steps in the steps in the Tao, which we haven't, for whatever reason, I don't think we've done before out of 400 episodes. So now we're going to do the steps. I know. So we're starting that next week. You can find this, the Tao of Our Understanding, like God of Our Understanding, recovery podcast. All those things you can find at buddyc.org, a bunch of other resources there. I just add to it as things, show themselves.
Awesome. All right. Well, you guys know where you can find us, at your at the bargain bin in your local Goodwill. And by the way, buddy, I do have a book in the bargain bin in Goodwill, and to me that was like a life goal, right? Like I made it to the bargain bin at Goodwill. All right, so I think that's it. I think that's all we got. So don't forget to stay active, stay sober. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the other good stuff. And yeah, buy the book. I think it'll definitely help the podcast. All right, that's it. That's all we got. So what is your final words, buddy? Give me a catchphrase.
Let go or get dragged.
Let go or get dragged. Perfect. All right. See you.
That's it.
Soberpod.com. Yeah. It was a sight to see him. Breakfast with Sprite and Seagrams. Wrestling with my vices, exercising my demons. My blessings were blocked, so I never got the message. I'm stressing. I'm exit, regret it, because my imperfections were perfected. I ain't run from it, I accept it and rep it. It's a badge to me. Good stories come from a tragedy, and when you survive, the glory will come in Act 3. The wait's over. 366 days sober. Morning affirmations that can start the day for you. Use my favorite bookmark for a placeholder. Finish when the day's over. Okay. Yeah, sober pod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.